I wanted to do. Um, this is the third live stream today. I wanted to sort of amend the last couple of things I was saying. So I've been learning a lot about how lighting works, and just as a update, this is how lighting looks now, and it actually looks pretty good. I would say it looks like this is Seattle mode in terms of how it looks. And you can see like it casts shadows, and like the player doesn't cast a shadow, but that's actually that's fine. That's what I want for now. But the player is still subject to shadows, and also the lighting it looks pretty normal. There's no weird thing in the sky, and everything is basically working. So earlier I'd said static light meant, oh, this only affects static objects. And I was confused by that because, or I believe that because here it says static lights are useful for lights that you want to collide with static geometry but ignore all the dynamic objects. That does not mean the static light only affects static geometry. It means, really, the lighting does not get automatic updates. If you ever want the light to sort of repaint, you have to, it's sort of awkward. You have to set up properties such that this dirty bit gets set. So before I get into that, a couple other things that I thought was useful. So you can't really tell that well, but if you look underneath the mountain, it looks pretty black, but not completely black. If you turn off ambient light, no, okay, it looks pretty similar. But ambient light is what allows you to. I mean, it sets the light everywhere, and okay, it might not be working quite the way I thought, but it sets it between 0 and 1. I don't know. Anyway, maybe that's not necessary after all. So if you comment it out, it looks like this. Okay. You'll notice it doesn't look as like blinding, like the world is ending. If you turn off use diffuse light, it goes back to like insanely bright. And I don't know. This seems like a weird default because it makes everything whiter, and I don't want it to be whiter. I want it to be brighter. Anyway, so this was nice. The only thing that sucks about it is that it's a static. Like you can't even have multiple ray handlers that do this differently. This is a very global setting across your entire game, and that's because it's used in the light maps and it doesn't pass data around very well. Anyway, maybe that's not a problem because this is what I want. Uh, so for the other, so another thing, I didn't have any contact. I didn't have any sort of filter data set on the various. Actually, it's right here. Um, on the various fixtures that get added to the game, and this is a little bit complicated, but basically, um, a filter is a sort of a set of bit masks or something that describes which physics objects will collide with each other. And it uses bit masks so it's extremely fast, and so it doesn't have to execute a callback or anything. Sort of, it doesn't have to make a method call for that. It just compares some bits together. And there's a category bit which says what this is, like this is a creature, and then there's a mask bit that says what it collides with. And so this is bit shifting in Kotlin is sort of horrible, um, especially since you can't even bit shift shorts. I don't know why. It's just it only allows you to like this method isn't on short. I think it's only on int. Yeah. Anyway, so this is 1, this is 2, and if I just keep the pattern going, if I were to say like this, then it'd be 4, and then 8, and then sort of, powers of 2, because it's a bit shifting. Anyway, so there's scenery and there's creature. The player is a creature because it is. Mask creature. This means what does creature collide with? It collides with scenery or creature. It collides with everything. Maybe creature will change later on, and then you can just detect if you're touching a creature, then you take damage or something. Because right now, if there's 2 players or NPCs or something, you will be able to like walk across the top of them. But I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Anyway, so the reason this is important is because you can use this same sort of bit mask thing with lighting. And by default, you get this weird, remember this weird shadow thing? So I thought static lighting meant that it only affects static geometry. That's just not true. It just means it never updates unless you tell it to update. So sort of there's 2 parts to fixing that. Like the first part is, that should be updated. And the second part is, why did it cast that to begin with? And the reason is because the character was there when it was doing its initial lighting calculations. However, if you say the lighting is, I don't know why I need to say category, but lighting is part of the scenery, and it uses the mask lighting mask. And the mask lighting here, it only collides with scenery. So if you set this mask on, now that little weird thing up there isn't there anymore, and everything is as it should be. The last thing I was running into was if you just run it and you go along and start digging, then you'll notice something fishy. None of the lighting is actually updating. It gets very dark, even though it's supposed to be not. And the reason is because it's a static light and it's not recalculating. It's assuming that the terrain that will never change. Which, of course, given that this is a terraforming game or a world building game, that's clearly not true. So I created another class called lighting. And lighting, first of all, it keeps track of whether it's dirty or not, whether it needs to refresh all the lights or not. And then, this is sort of annoying, but you have to tell it what lights to keep track of. And it has a GDX array of light. And false means it's unordered, because we don't care what order the array is in. And it defaults to size 16. Anyway, so if you add static light, it adds it in here. Mark dirty, sets it to dirty, equal to true. And for static light update, if necessary, says if dirty, set dirty to false. And then for each static light, it sets static light equal to static light. This looks like it doesn't do anything. It actually does something. It sets it to its current value, because we don't actually want to change it. And then here it says if static light, then dirty equals true. If there was a mark dirty method on light, we would much prefer to do that, but there's no way to do that. So you just have to. You could call this. You could call set soft. You could call any of these other methods that change the state. Thankfully, it doesn't check to see whether it's actually changing or not. That's a nice little loophole. So I call add static light from one place. This is the place where I create the light, and great. And, that's how it gets added in. Mark dirty is called from the main module, actually. Whenever a physics object is removed from the game that is of type static body, then it causes the lighting to be marked as dirty. And so the final step is in the rendering system we injected for a third and final time, and here we call for static light update if necessary. And this is nice because if there's multiple objects destroyed in a given tick, it'll only do it here. Something else that you could do if you wanted It wouldn't look as nice, but you could. There's another entity system called interval system, and this is something that only fires once every interval. This basically, so if you could say like, if you wanted to, you could pull out this logic here into an interval system and it calls it every 100 milliseconds or something. So every 6 or 8 frames instead of every frame. Granted, it doesn't do anything most of the time, and if you do that, then you'll see sort of the shadow update after you destroy the block by by up to 100 milliseconds. And that really only helps if you're doing like a lot of destruction of static blocks within 100 milliseconds and you don't want to recalculate every single frame. But a player really can't dig things out that fast, and unless there's a lot of destruction happening every frame, I don't know, it's really not worth it. So some other ideas that I have to make this, so some other ideas that I have is it would be sort of cool if the player cast a little bit of a shadow. However, like if you look at what it looks like normally, where is it? Game initializer. So if we say it's not static and turn off this contact filter, so this will give shadows to the player. You get this really, I don't know, you get this really big shadow. And honestly, I think one of the solutions to this might be to create multiple lights, because even because this is a single directional light from straight up, and if it was sort of a more realistic, maybe there'd be a light here. I don't know if it'd be like, it wouldn't be like 45-degree angles, because that'd be sort of like stadium lighting sort of looking, but it might be 15 degrees off, and then that way you won't get this perfect shadow behind it. But anyway, so what I was thinking is maybe just create additional lights that instead of hitting only the scenery, hit only the player, and then you can do things like adjust the softness. And the softness is roughly, well, it looks. This is why I don't have it this low, because it looks ridiculous. It might look less ridiculous if the player wasn't, self-shadowing. Oh, so the softness distance is like roughly how many world tiles the lighting will reach, and because it knows about the world scale, so like because this is 1 meter tall, the lighting will fade out. It's sort of hard to see because it's going all the way to black, but it'll fade out after 1 meter or so. You want it to be something that sort of looks good, but you don't want it to be too high, otherwise the players will be able to see any hidden goodies underneath the earth. If there's some valuable down here, you don't want them to see it. If you set this to like 6, then there's not a lot of mystery. Like anything down here they won't be able to see, but they'll be able to see pretty far up top. Yeah, the self-shadowing of players sort of looks goofy because it's a sprite. Something else I've noticed, okay, somewhat related, something else I've noticed is sensors, like physics objects that are invisible, still can cast shadows. The box 2D lights doesn't say, this thing has a sensor, this thing is a sensor, I'm not going to let it cast a shadow. You have to rely entirely on this contact filter to do that. Which, I don't know, that seems sort of weird. Like, sensors are normally invisible, so I don't know. Maybe that's just the way I use them. But they're not meant to collide, which means they're usually not something you can see. Anyway, so the point being is if I want the player to cast a shadow without causing this blobby shadow figure around the entire thing, then I can just have the sensor, which is his feet anyway, cast a shadow, and then you'll basically get everything from here down without the self-shadowing. So anyway, just let me fix it again. I don't like that I have to like separately keep track of my static lights. I would rather just say like ray handler dot like uh like query the list of lights or something, or have a sort of on light added sort of thing. But you know, no dice. This thing's not working, so I'm just gonna remove that. Let's turn the lighting up a little bit. It was sort of dreary. Okay, well that's pretty intense, but that looks good. Okay, the last thing is previously on directional light, was it? I was confused that -90. It says, I thought it said -90 direction is straight up, straight from up, which is what you want. And actually, the same thing as what I had before. 270 and -90 are the same thing. They're just going clockwise instead of counterclockwise. Anyway, so here we go. I published source code on the first Paradise video because someone asked for it as a comment. So I don't know, like this is originally going to be sort of an educational series, so I don't really mind doing that. But if it ever gets to the point when I'm either using something proprietary or it gets to the point where it's actually like somewhat possibly commercially viable, you gotta defend your property a little bit. You don't want, like, the real risk is like someone takes it, claims it as their own, and starts selling it. And you don't want to deal with that. Granted, it's Java, so you can already decompile it fairly easily if you're not running it through all sorts of obfuscators. Anyway, so I'm gonna publish what I can, as much as I can, yeah, I hope to keep making videos. But do keep in mind I have a regular full-time job, so it's not like I'll be finishing this game in a couple weeks or something, or making significant progress. It's going to be mostly maybe fiddling and trying to figure out what I want to do next. Like, do we want to have monsters? Do we want to have weapons? Do we want to make mining actually work correctly? Day-night cycle. Figure out what the game is about. Because this is at the point where it's very... the basics are in place, and it's time to figure out what to actually make of it. So, thanks for watching.